Before I jump into my own arguments, I'd like to give several responses regarding the case of the government-centered house. The first one is how the government-centered house stated that it's okay for them to take the rights of the people because they believe that the people is complicit in creating harms by voting the wrong people into office. We state that it's not exclusive. First, because the motion actually want to pass a political general knowledge test, not a test on someone's moral compass. And we also disagree with the narrative that the government-centered house used by saying wrong people, because we believe that there are no wrong people, it's just right person for different values. We also believe that the government cannot impose values on the people. The government also do not have a right to dictate which candidate is voted for. So therefore, we cannot see how taking people's right to vote is justifiable, because at the end of the day, people will still vote who they want to vote anyway. The second response is how the government-centered house state that they want to push people to be more analytical instead of voting for narrative and rhetorics. However, we say that people do not vote based on their basic knowledge, right? People vote based on their identity and interest. People vote for who they see represent themselves the best and their ideas the best. So therefore, we believe that at the end of the day, people will still vote based on identity and interest anyway, even if they become more knowledgeable. The third point of response is how the government-centered house say they want to solve polarization by passing on this motion. But we, as the opposition-centered house, will say that first, not only polarization will still exist anyway, but second, how polarization existing is actually something that is justifiable, because we believe that the existence of polarizations can actually create a better climate for democracy. Why? Because as long as polarization exists, there's going to be government and oppositions constantly, and that's why the check and balance will happen better in our case. Anyway, and the existence of polarization is something that is good to keep on to for us to have better democracy. Jumping into my own arguments, there are 4 sets of arguments that I want to talk about today, and I will start with the first one is why voting based on bias is okay. The government team stated how most citizens are educated well in terms of political general knowledge, the candidate's identity, their backgrounds, their interests, their party they're representing, and so on and so forth. However, we believe that it is okay for the people to vote based on complete bias. Why? Because because bias is based on our own political identity, even if it is as shallow as voting for the candidate who has the best looking face. Voting within democracy is about individual intellectual property, which represents our interests and also our identity backgrounds, right? So therefore, our interest and identity is what influences our consideration, and we want this to be represented through the party or candidate that we vote for. For example, the government-centered house condemned how people vote Trump for his rhetorics of "Make America Great Again," right? However, we believe that those are not the only people who vote for Trump. There are also the spectrum of people who vote Trump because of how Trump is more of the conservative candidate. So conservative Christian in the US feels threatened by progressive ideas and how it's not matching with their Christian values, and therefore their vote on Trump is justified because it's based on their Christian identity, their identity background, and they see an interest in voting Trump because they believe that Trump will uphold their Christian values, and therefore their vote on Trump is actually completely justified. Why is conservativeness okay to keep on? Because conservativeness creates communal happiness that are based on sense of security and safety, and therefore it's justifiable for this value to continue existing in our society. And this does not only apply to conservative values, this applies to any values, liberal values, or other religious values, and so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, all values deserve to exist in a healthy system of democracy. The second point of argument is how our society is actually already progressive enough, so therefore there is no urgency to pass on this motion. In the status quo right now, our society has already progressed. So when the Prime Minister claimed that our society is first, not knowledgeable enough, and second, the ones who are knowledgeable are not sharing their knowledge, we want to disprove this. How? First, by saying that our society is very much politically awake and involved. There are so many different conversations, ranging from the comment section of political posts by younger people even political talk between neighbors, or even political talk inside of family gatherings. This shows that our society is actually very much awake, that they have a stay in the political world, and also that they vote matters, and also that they deserve to vote based on their own values and interests, right? So therefore, we say that our society is knowledgeable enough, and it shows. Not to mention that the second point is how they say that there are not enough people sharing their knowledge. We disprove this by saying that there are already so many different types of educations or conversations happening, whether it's through social media, whether it's through traditional media like TV. There are so many different ways of this education and knowledge sharing happening, that we see no urgency in the government, in how the government side of the house want to force people to learn political general knowledge only for the sake of passing a test, when in status quo right now organic education is already happening, and it is already enough. The third point of argument is how this motion can actually harm democracy, right? The government side of the house stated that they want real democracy to survive by wanting to pass this motion, but we believe that it is actually not true, because voting is the absolute right of the citizens, right? Once someone is of the age of consent, they deserve to have a right to vote. Not to mention that democracy is created by three things. The first one is accountability, the second one is check and balance, and the third one is participation. And what the government side of the house want to impose is actually limiting participation, right? We believe that it is not okay, because at the end of the day, democracy is the government for people, from the people, and also by the people. Not to mention that policies will affect all people, regardless of whether or not they're knowledgeable or not knowledgeable enough in terms of political general knowledge, and therefore all of them have a say in what kind of government will come in shape. The fourth point is how check and balance can happen better in our case, because in our case there's an assumption that there's some less knowledgeable people who vote. There's incentive for the government or even NGOs to educate the general population about political knowledge, and in government side of the house there is no incentive, right? This kind of constant education will create continuous discourse, will actually means that check and balance will continue to happen, because candidates and also political figures will always be constantly in talk and in observation of the people, and that's why we beg to oppose. Thank you very much.